Hello, everyone. So, I want to talk about understanding the history of Kenya and coming to understand how millennials think with the relationship to the history of our country, Kenya. Now, Kenya is a sovereign state. Kenya attained independence in the 1960s, but it didn't come very easily. The history of Kenya, up to a point where Kenya gains independence, is a history of struggle. We had colonizers in Kenya, the white men. Kenya was colonized by British. But during the period when you are fighting for independence, we had leaders who stood for different ideologies, like Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Jomo Kenyatta. At the same time, we had intellects like Tom Joseph Mboya, call him Tom Mboya. And when you go to archives, you see the statue there. That's the statue of Tom Mboya. Those people really contributed in the writing of the Constitution of Kenya. With the limited education, they really came to draft some of the constitutional amendments which are currently in use up to date. Understanding the struggle for independence of Kenya is very important in terms of understanding how millennials approach life. The history of Kenya is full of betrayal, from political parties to leadership. You see, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and Jomo Kenyatta, they really fought. We can say during Cold War in the early 1960s, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga stood for, he really wanted Kenya to be a communist party because he argued that now that we are attaining independence from white man, continuing to associate with white men means that we are endangered in terms of having choice on who to do business with, who to trade with, and what cultural choices or which type of governance to adopt, whether democracy or communism or capitalism. But Jomo Kenyatta really stood for capitalism. If you are very good in history, you can have a look at the Limuru Conference. That's one of the conferences which were held and that really exposed the big difference between the two parties. It was very tough. Later on, not to speak much, yes, we attained independence. Jomo Kenyatta became the president. After Jomo Kenyatta, Moi became the president. Some millennials enjoyed the advantages we came by the presidency of Moi. But if you really study Moi, you will come to understand that Moi was not just a leader. He was a man of personality. How he talks, how he walks, how he addresses the congregation. What we call in modern society, we call it the cult of personality. He was obsessed with power. So, as a child growing up and seeing such president, you really admire them. So you feel like I need to be powerful like Moi. So you can suppress, you can play people like cards. How Moi used to push cards against his cabinets and people using people like Biwott. These are some of the drastic changes Kenya went through over those years. Now we have a little bit of democracy. It's very rare for such cases to occur because we have laws protecting both workers and the MPs and the leaders. So during the period of Moi, this is the period in which most millennials grew. At the same time, their teachers, principals, what they learned from them. Right then, the big people in school can come and beat you thoroughly. You can be beaten. You don't have a chance for diplomacy. So they believe in enforcing laws, using force. Coming into 20th century, after now Kenya having more than 2 to 3 presidents, the society has really undergone drastic change. And how governance happens, how leadership happens, from electing our leaders from primary to university, has really changed. If you are two people who have undergone these two systems, you have come to experience these two systems separately, and you come to interact one on one, you will always get into conflict. How you view life is completely different. Two completely different beings. Someone want to take advantage of the other. The other has a total different perspective of how to get things done. This always arises to conflict. There are many things which can cause conflict. Another term for conflict is war. People fight. People shed blood. But to resolve this, we have what's called a conflict resolution committee. That's the primary approach. You can use diplomacy. But if you two people are not into the same point, you don't view things the same, there will always be trouble. So to understand how millennials and the Gen Zs think, the first step is to understand the history of Kenya, especially in terms of governance. The history of Ford Kenya, the history of ODM, all these parties. If you look at the history of Ford Kenya, how we have been having parties overthrowing leaders. If you're someone who has studied logic, call it Boolean algebra, where you learn about what is true or false. You come to realize that in Kenya, we highly appreciate false. We reward false instead of true. That's why most leaders who have been into leadership are the ones who infringe the most damage to the other party. And that's how Kenya has been working to raise their leaders in power. So in Kenya, doing things fairly is not going to take you anywhere. That's the ideology which has been sold to millennials. So us as millennials, of course I'm not, but most millennials don't believe in fairness. It's a thing of the past. So they better resort into Machiavellian methods to ensure they achieve their goals under any circumstance, whether it's a matter of life or death. So understanding how the Kenyan society works is very important. So if you understand this well, you will always find it easy to communicate with both the young and the old. But going forward, we are now working in a multiracial society. There's nothing like the Kikuyus or the Luos. You have Kenya. And when you speak about Kenya, we don't see Luos or Kikuyus or other tribe. It is something deeper than what millennials experienced. Only Gen Zs can tell about. And East Africa. At least one of us must have associated with someone from a different country apart from Kenya in their high school or university life, whether from Somalia, whether from Sudan. After associating with these people, you come to learn about them. And thus, it's very easy to live with people outside here for Gen Zs as compared to millennials. If you want to understand more, you better learn more about Tom Joseph Mboya, Oginga Odinga, Jomo Kenyatta, Daniel Arap Moi. You better learn about Biwott. Better learn about Ouko. The Kapengura, we call the Kapengura 6 or 7. If you're in a position to understand these people, you will understand the politics of Kenya very well and the history of the Kenyan election. If you are able to understand how controversial the Kenyan election has been over the years, you're going to understand this Kenyan society much better.